Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
The Canadiens have the Leafs right where they want them. The Canadiens are down 3-1 in the series. How many times have you seen the Leafs up 3-1 in a series and blow it? So, like, if history repeats, then this is the script is writing itself perfectly.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, so it is June 15th today. We have not recorded in the entire month of June, I think. I don't remember the last time we recorded. It's a really long time ago, and there's a very good reason for that, and I will explain it to our listeners right now because some people did not read your social media posts. So what happened was we had decided that we were going to record a short 15-minute episode after each Canadiens game because, you know, Montreal was playing Toronto. You live in Montreal. I live in Toronto. So it just made a lot of sense. And ever since we decided to do that, the Canadiens lost 3 consecutive games. So I said to you, I think we jinxed the Canadiens and we need to stop recording. You thought that was very funny. Your wife laughed at me as well. But we decided that we were going to stop recording. And ever since we stopped recording, the Canadiens went on a 7-game winning streak and only finally lost a game last night to the Vegas Golden Knights. So that brings us to today, and we've decided to finally record an episode.
Yeah, so the last time we recorded was actually May 26th. I went to check it, the actual date, and you're 100% right about everything you said. Basically, you didn't want to record because you thought we jinxed the team. So this is exactly how the conversation went. You texted me saying it just occurred to me that since we decided to record, you know, they lost every game. And I asked you a very specific question. Is it the actual recording or was it the decision to record? And you were emphatic that it was the decision to record that was the cause of the jinx.
Well, it had to be the decision because the recording only happened after the game. So that couldn't be the cause for the loss. The cause for the loss had to be the decision to record, which occurred before the game.
So then 2 hours went by, or maybe 3 hours went by after our initial text about the possible jinx. And then you canceled our recording session in our Google Calendar. And I texted you saying, are you canceling? Like, I thought maybe it was a mistake or something. And then you said, yeah, I'm canceling because we jinxed the team. And then I said, that's nuts. And then you said, I know. I used to think the Expos won or lost games depending on which side of the couch I sat on. And I went with it. I was like fully embracing this jinx that we caused. And I went with it for 7 games. The Canadiens won all 7 games. Now, so how do you explain the fact that we didn't record before this previous game and then they lost game 1 last night versus Las Vegas? The jinx just ran its course. It was a new series, time zones, playing in the United States.
Well, I mean, it's all of the above. You know, one series has nothing to do with the other. One country has nothing to do with the other. A team that the Canadiens haven't played all season long. So, you know, I mean, these jinxes or curses or whatever you want to call them, they eventually run out. So, and now,
so what happens?
You know what? The truth is, we could be jinxing them again now by recording right now because they lost a game, but they're not eliminated from the playoffs yet.
But we could be doing them a service too, because if they win tomorrow, does that mean that they won because we recorded after the loss?
We don't have a big enough sample to determine that yet.
I went on, I'm all over the social media, right? So Twitter, the Habs Reddit and everything. And there was a whole thread on Reddit about the superstitions. What superstitions are you doing, since they got on this win streak? And there's a guy that got some press. He got written up in some news articles and stuff. They call him Pizza Guy. Basically, he ordered pizza and then they won. And then he kept ordering pizza every game. So then all these other people started ordering pizza every game before the game as their pregame meal, as if they're playing. And then they won. So the pizza places in Montreal got a big boost from the Canadiens winning. And I don't know if you saw, but I think it started because, it continued because Phil Deneau, I don't know if you saw, but he was eating pizza after, in the press, when they interviewed him after the elimination games against Toronto and then the 4th game against Winnipeg. So that was cool. And I mean, there's just, there's on that Reddit thread, there's people with different things about their superstitions. Like they only watch in a specific room. They wear a specific jersey. During the winning streak, they wore specific jerseys.
They don't shave. Like the players don't shave during the playoffs.
That's true. Although the Canadiens have some kind of mustache thing going on with a few of the players, right? Instead of shaving, they're growing like the mustache.
Right. It's this year. It's the mustache instead of the beard.
Yeah, like Petrie has it and Gallagher, a few guys, right? Yeah. There's one guy that said that his girlfriend watches the games topless, and that's why they started winning, and she watched all the games topless in the win streak, which is good for him, I guess. But
listen, whatever works. You do what you have to do, right? If you have to wear the same pair of underwear for a month, then do it.
So, like, I was really torn last night because, of course, I want the Canadiens to win. But it's been 2 weeks since we had a podcast. And I'm dying to do one, I'm dying to do an episode. So when they lost last night, I was kind of relieved. And actually, I didn't want to text you. And when it was 4-1 and there was 3 minutes left in the game, or even when it was 3-1, like in the third period, I was going to text you so we're recording tomorrow. But I made sure that I waited till the game was 100% over because I knew you'd be so mad.
I think I mentioned this on the last episode that we did record. Remember when George Costanza decided to abstain from sex and he realized how much smarter he was?
You're no longer preoccupied with sex, so your mind is able to focus. You think? Yeah, let's say this is your brain, okay? Now, from what I know about you, your brain consists of two parts. The intellect, represented here, and the part obsessed with sex. Now, granted, you have extracted an astonishing amount from this little scrap. But with no sex Louise, this previously useless lump is now functioning for the first time in its existence.
So we abstained from doing a podcast. Did you notice that you got smarter since then?
No, I think I got dumber.
Okay.
Because the podcast forces me to take notes on things that I find in everyday life. Or in this case about the Canadiens. And now I'm just sort of going through life aimlessly without paying attention to stuff.
Well, we can't go over the last 7 games because we'd be here for about 7 hours. There's too many things to talk about. But some things, even though they won 7 games in a row, some things have remained exactly the same as they were when they were losing 3 games in a row.
Well, I texted you one thing during the game yesterday. And it was when they were losing 3-1. Basically, it was exactly the same as game 2 or game 3 against Toronto. I forget which game, when they were getting killed. And it was and we talked about it on that recap episode. Without Carey Price, it would have been 6-1 or more, right? And that's the game yesterday looked exactly like those games against Toronto, where the only difference is in the game yesterday is that they actually came out playing pretty well in the first period, and they tried to push back, but Fleury's a much better goalie than the 2 goalies that they faced so far. Well, maybe Hellebuck is better, but he didn't play better, But Fleury is, Fleury, what are you going to say? First of all, Fleury's crazy to watch.
Fleury's a very good goalie, and I think his stats are almost identical to Carey Price's stats, not including yesterday's game. But going into the game, I think their stats were very close to identical. The thing with Fleury is, he can have a lapse, and he can have a bad game. You've seen that happen with Vegas, with Pittsburgh. You've seen it happen.
Oh.
So
all the time.
The Canadiens just have to get lucky, and he has to have a bad game. Similarly, Vegas has to get lucky, and Price has to have a bad game. Now, Price, I can't really fault him on any of the goals last night. The team in front of him didn't help much. And if it wasn't for Price, like you said, they would have lost by a much higher margin.
Yeah, he did everything he could. He made some ridiculous saves. That one off of Mark Stone was unbelievable. And, he kept them in the game at that point, Do I think, look, a lot of Canadiens fans were there was a big earthquake in Montreal today with all the fans jumping off the bandwagon.
Yeah,
basically.
No surprise.
Right? There was a tremor. And, what, you think you're going to go win the Stanley Cup and you're going to win every series by a sweep? But that doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen.
Well, everyone was thinking it's going to be like 1993 when they won 11 consecutive games and 10 games in overtime.
But even the greatest teams in history sometimes win their series in 6 or 7 games. Even the greatest teams in history, right? You're going to lose games.
if I'm not mistaken, one streak that's still intact is the Canadiens still haven't lost an overtime game.
That is correct.
Which is very funny because during the regular season, the Canadiens were terrible in overtime. Awful.
It's because in the regular season, there's the 3-on-3. They're no good in the 3-on-3. They only got better in the 3-on-3 when they called Caulfield up because he's a weapon in the 3-on-3. Right?
Right.
So now they're going to, they have that going next year. But this year, I mean, it's just the confidence of the goalie behind them.
It's not just that. I mean, the overtime in the playoffs is completely different. It's 5-on-5, like you said, and it's a tight checking, grind it out type of game. In the regular season, overtime is like you're on the pond with your buddies. There's no hitting whatsoever because you can't even catch one of the guys to hit them. So,
Absolutely.
And the Canadiens don't play well when it's a wide open offensive type of game.
No. Well, you could see it in the game plan yesterday. Vegas was trying to skate up and down the ice, and the Canadiens were trying to cycle and grind it. They were trying to slow the pace. Can they do that? They certainly can. It's difficult. Vegas is big. Physically, they're a big team. And they use their size. They're not they're not a great offensive team, Vegas. They don't have... They're very similar built to the Canadiens in that they roll their four lines and they try to get scoring from a lot of different people. Obviously, the top end with Stone and Pacioretty, those guys can score goals. A lot. Compared to who the Canadiens have, you could argue. And also their defense, Vegas. They have Pietrangelo, who's an elite defenseman who can log minutes upon minutes upon minutes, and the Canadiens have Weber and Sherratt logging minutes upon minutes, and those guys are not in the same stratosphere as Pietrangelo at this point.
Yeah, and the Canadiens miss Jeff Petrie a lot. I mean, the way he got injured is such a freak thing, and you noticed what does he play 25 minutes a game? So someone else is going to have to play those 25 minutes. And I love Romanov, don't get me wrong, but I can't stand Gustafsson, and even when he's on the power play and the only one job he has to do is play on the power play, even then he makes mistakes.
No. They won all those games with Gustafsson in the lineup despite their bad decision.
Correct.
They made a bad decision by putting him in, and then they won games, and then they kept putting him in just because, we won with him. But the guy sucks. He showed it yesterday. He's not good. He shouldn't be playing. And maybe with what they had yesterday, they have no choice, right? Because Petrie's hurt, Merrill is still hurt. What are you going to bring in, Xavier Ouellet? I don't think so. So if Petrie's healthy for game 2, I really, really hope that Gustafsson is out and Romanov stays.
I hope so. Romanov played well yesterday, and also, I sort of understand. One thing I will give Ducharme credit for is that ever since they started winning, he didn't change the lineup other than the guys who were injured and he had no choice. You don't mess with a winning lineup. So he didn't. He put Gustafsson in. They won 7 in a row. He didn't change anything. Now that they've lost, if one of the other defensemen is healthy, someone who played is going to have to sit. I hope that someone is Gustafsson.
I texted you this during last week. It's been so long, I don't remember. The decision to use Gustafsson, it reminded me of the Expos with Felipe Alou when the Expos were at their peak in the 90s, early 90s. Larry Walker normally would bat 4th in the order, right? And so then Walker was injured. So they would play a backup right fielder. I don't know who they had at that time, doesn't matter. But instead of changing the lineup, all he would do is move everyone up. Right? So all of a sudden, Darren Fletcher was batting cleanup, right? Or whatever, or Sean Barry, or whoever, and I would always look at you. We would often be at the games together, or watching, or listening together, and I would be like, "What the hell is Felipe doing? Why not make a good lineup instead of just how lazy is it to just move everyone up?" But it used to work, and then it used to work. So then he would continue doing the same stupid thing, right?
Well, it was weird because for some reason, the weird stuff that Felipe did worked most of the time. So I didn't quite understand it. Now, I have a different comparison to make, but also to baseball. So I don't know if you recall the year or two that Jim Fanning was the manager of the Expos. I think a few years later, Bill Lee came out and said something like, well, yeah, he was our manager technically on paper, but really the players were managing the team because... Fanning didn't really know what he was doing. I'm sort of wondering if it's a similar situation with the Canadiens, where, Ducharme, sometimes I wonder what he's doing, and maybe the players just decided amongst themselves, look, we'll let him be the coach, we'll let him tell us what to do, but really, we know what we're doing, and we don't really need him.
Well, there's the same story, a hockey comparison to that. In the Canadiens, when they won the Stanley Cup in 1986, who was the coach?
Jean Perron?
Jean Perron, exactly. But if you recall, that 86 team was full of rookies, like Claude Lemieux, like those kind of rookies, and also grizzled veterans. Larry Robinson at the end of his career, Bob Gainey at the end of his career. But like these guys that knew how to win, right? Ultimate winners. And basically the stories that came out later on was that, Robinson and Gainey basically took charge of the team and said, we're just going to ignore, we're going to win despite this dude behind the bench. Now, there's been stories that have refuted that, and players will never say that out loud, but I still believe that's true.
Who knows? We'll never know. What we will find out after the Canadiens get eliminated is how many injuries they're dealing with. I mean, Brendan Gallagher is not healthy. I know Shea Weber's playing, but he's not healthy. Obviously, Petrie's not healthy because he's not even playing. The list goes on and on.
Well, I'm sure Josh Anderson was not healthy after the other series. He looked a little more lively yesterday. Yeah, for sure, there's tons of injuries. But you can't say that because I'm sure Vegas has their share of injuries too. They just came off a 6-game series with Colorado. And, the Canadiens should not be complaining about injuries, right? I mean, look, Tavares, they beat Toronto without Tavares. And then they beat Winnipeg. Scheifele wasn't an injury. That's his own doing. That's Scheifele's own doing. But they lost one of their other defensemen, DeMello, who they really missed. So injuries happen. And that's a part, every single Stanley Cup champion ever had to deal with injuries. Ever.
Absolutely, right.
The Stanley Cup playoffs is the hardest trophy to win because it's the ultimate grind, So
extremely grueling. And the Canadiens aren't complaining, and I'm not complaining either. I'm just saying.
Yeah, for sure. So the big question, Josh, I know they lost last night. They didn't look good. It looked like the first games. It looked like the early part of the Toronto series, but can they beat Vegas?
Well, listen, I didn't think they could beat Toronto or Winnipeg, and they did. So can they beat Vegas? Yes, they can. Will they beat Vegas? Who knows? They could lose the next 3 in a row and get swept. I could also see them winning 4 in a row now. Who knows? Because this is a very Jekyll and Hyde type team.
We didn't know what to expect because obviously we haven't played Vegas this year. We haven't played any team outside of Canada, right? So this is our first chance to play a new team. Same for them. And Vegas was hyped up because obviously they had one of the top records in the league of all the teams this year. But I think that famous Dennis Green quote, they are who we thought they were.
But they are who we thought they were. And we let them off the hook.
That's exactly what it is. They are who we thought they were. I don't think they didn't look like world beaters. They didn't look like, actually, I think Toronto's was more scary than they are because Toronto had Marner and Matthews who could just score. You always felt they could score at any second,
Toronto's offense was certainly much better, but Vegas has the better goaltending, and just I think Vegas has a much more balanced team because with Toronto, when you shut down their top line, especially when Tavares got hurt, there wasn't much else there.
But all that to say is in the first period, I was this could go either way. Just like every playoff game could go either way. It's not like the Canadiens, you forget, they beat Winnipeg, but 2 of those games were in overtime, those games could have gone either way also.
Right. Even though Montreal swept Winnipeg, that series was a lot closer than you go back and look at it 50 years from now, you see a 4-0 sweep. It doesn't tell you the story.
Yeah. No.
And similarly, when it was 2-1 Vegas after Cole Caulfield had scored last night, if Montreal gets the next goal, it's a completely different game. Now, unfortunately, 30 seconds later, Vegas scored and made it 3-1 and whatever. But
that third goal changed a lot. It was 2-1. I felt we're back in it. Caulfield got on the board. His first playoff goal. It was great to see, and then they scored that goal on the double deflection. The third goal. It was disappointing.
Yeah.
It was disappointing. That's all I got, really.
Yeah, that's all I got, too. I don't know. Maybe we'll record in 2 days from now. Maybe we won't. Who knows? We'll see.
I have one more thing to ask you. The whole Vegas pregame thing, the show, I mean, the anthems and the lead up and everything goes on. Like, how do you feel about all that?
They've been doing that for years, and no, I don't think they do it just for playoff games. I think they do it for every single game. They get like a different famous person to, what is it, spin that thing, or I don't know what it's called. So, look, let them have their fun. I mean, I don't know how educated those fans are. I know a lot of them come to the game because it's like the thing to do. But I don't know, like, if you go to talk to a local Vegas person, when did they start following hockey? How much do they know about hockey? What do they know about the power play? How many players on the team can they even name? I don't know. But if they want to go and have a good time, let them go and have a good time. I got no problem with that.
I agree with that in the sense that, like, of course they're new fans. Of course they're new fans in a market that traditionally hasn't known anything about hockey. But the arena's packed every night, like even I'm talking about before pre-pandemic, and it's packed now. So they're obviously doing something right, the organization, to get people in the building. So that's good on them. I just found it so over the top that it was like, I can't watch this.
There were a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans in the building last night.
Yeah, I don't know where they came from. But I mean, they didn't come across the border, I don't think.
Well, I mean, I don't think they went intentionally to go to the game. I think maybe they just happened to be in the States and they decided, let's go to the game if we can get tickets, that sort of thing.
Well, there are a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans everywhere.
Right.
I mean, all across Canada, but, every city that's a hockey city, there's Canadiens fans.
Getting into the United States is actually not that difficult. Even during a pandemic, it's getting back that's the problem.
It's coming back. I know. Because I'm trying to plan my first trip to the U.S. for work, when it may be, like, just thinking about it. And it's the coming back. That's like, I don't know if I want to go through that, so hopefully it's going to change soon.
I'm going to tease this. We may take a trip to Vegas in November.
Oh, that's a big tease. I love that. I hope we do. I want to go. I want to go badly, actually. So are we going to record after the next game? I don't know.
We'll have to play it by ear.
Okay, that sounds like a plan to me. Okay.
But, I mean, because the games end so late, we can't do it at night.
Oh, no. You're right. And even when they're playing in Montreal, the games are 8 o'clock starts, so they're going to end later.
So it'll have to be the day after.
All right. Great talking to you. I'm glad we got to do this recording. And go Habs go.
Go Habs go. Talk to you later.